Okay, everybody, welcome to the Countless Vlogcast. My guest today is Milo Denison, an author. So, how you doing today?
Good,
Tell us
good.
about you.
Yeah, and I probably should have mentioned this because people mispronounce my name all the time. It's Milo
Yeah.
Dennis. It's Milo, not
Oh, sorry,
Milo.
Milo.
No
Okay,
worries. Everybody does it, so I'm used to it.
perfect. Okay, so tell us like where you're from, a little about yourself, and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the United States. I'm currently living in London, and I spent most of my life working in technology. And after I kind of got out of that line of work, I decided to kind of get into writing and other kind of stuff, and wrote a book about my time in technology and working with other people and working for other people. But that's it. I'm just kind of guy that's been all over the world, I guess, a little
Mhm.
bit.
Okay, so talk about that a little bit. Your travels a little bit. How did that inspire your writing and all your journey? Talk about your journey a little bit.
Yeah, well, the travels, I've kind of always had a passion for it. I'm from Seattle originally, and just kind of love to go all over the place. So I was working for Microsoft for quite a few years, and an opportunity came up to move to their Dublin, Ireland office. So I jumped on that and moved over there, which was kind of interesting because I'd never been to the country
Mhm.
before in my life. My first day in the country was the day I stepped off the airplane to live there, and spent 6 years there, and then decided to, when I left Microsoft, decided to come to London for a little while. I had an opportunity to come here, and yeah, I've been here since October of this year. But I think it's the desire to travel and move around is really just about meeting new people. You get kind of, if you just stay in the same area with the same people all the time, it's cool, because you make really good friends.
Yeah.
But you don't meet new people and do interesting new things. And I've kind of just always had that bug in me, to where I like to move around a lot. Yeah, I mean, I miss me at home, and I like to go there when I
Mhm.
can. But that's pretty much it.
So in terms of like writing too, I know you like to move around a lot too. But how do you get time to like write though? What inspires you to like start writing? Do you just like sit there? Do you write when you're traveling? How you do that?
Yeah, that's the hard part. So I try to force myself to write every day. And I think that's the advice to give to other writers too. And it doesn't need to be a lot.
Mm.
It can be set 15 minutes aside in a day. I mean, that's not a massive amount of time out of your day. And if you write more than that, great. But if do that as bare minimum. And for me, I'm a coffee shop writer.
Hmm.
So I'm one of those people that likes to go to the coffee shop, grab a coffee, sit down with his little laptop and pound away at it, which makes living in the time of coronavirus a pain in the ass because I can't do that. But for the big one is I try to do, and I find as a writer, traveling around and meeting people, it kind of does inspire me, especially when I'm working on fiction type stuff and essays. Even I use characters and people that I meet in those stories. So I'm working on a book of essays right now, actually, and there's a lot of stuff in it that's in uh, based on kind of the places I've been and the people I've met. That's kind of more or less what it's all about.
So talk about that a little bit. Talk about your last travel, your last like visit. How did that? How did you get the character from that though? What kind of like character did you create from your last like couple trips?
Let's see. My last trip. Where did I last go to? My last trip actually was to New York,
Mm.
and that was in January, February, just before everything shut down.
That was
And we,
perfect timing.
yeah, exactly. But we froze our asses off there the whole time. But it was cool because some friends of mine, my former Microsoft colleagues, moved there to to the office out of the New York, and so I was able to go and visit with them and kind of hear about how their lives have changed in that. And so I can potentially use that in a story of I'll give you an example. So a good friend of mine, he's Irish. I met him in Ireland. We worked together there. And I wrote another book called An Expat's Guide to Ireland, Life in a Second World Country. So I'm kind of making fun of Ireland a little bit by calling it a second world country, even though I'm technically using that term incorrectly. And so he was kind of offended at the title of the book. And being Irish, being about proud Irish person that he is. And then he moves to New York. And after he lives there for quite a while, and I'm visiting with him, I'm like, and now he's kind of turned into a New Yorker, even though he lived there for like 3 years. And he's very like, yeah, it's the best place in the world kind of thing. And I asked him, I'm like, so do you see now why I called Ireland a second world country? Because it's not that it is, but it has a lot of first world and third world problems, and in the way that they do things in Ireland. Like, you can't just run down to a grocery store and get certain things like you can in New York, for example, or the food choices, that kind of stuff. And so having him have that experience of living in both places, I can then bring that into my experiences and what I write about.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So like in terms of like your writing too, and like your travels too, I know you go to different like countries too, but like does each place inspire you differently? Would you say like inspires you differently, or like you find like similarities in the certain places?
Yeah, it's a little of both. When I moved here to London, it's interesting. I was talking to a guy, and he was asking me about like what's the difference between London and the United States. And everywhere I go, people, that's always usually the first question people ask: what's the difference? And because everybody wants to be unique. Where they're from, we want it to be unique, right? And it makes sense. But it's interesting because if you sit down and think about it, we're actually really not all that different, no matter where you are. I mean, yeah, you might have language barriers, but the reality is we all kind of want the same things in life. We all want to be successful. We all want to have loving relationships, that kind of stuff. So I think we're more the same than we are different. So it's always a fascinating question how people are looking at like, what are the differences between where you're from to where you are?
So that makes it interesting too, in terms of like readership too. Do you find like you in terms of your audience, like who do you think about when you like people want people to read it too? Because I know you move around a lot too. You've been in different places though. When you think about like readership and audience, who do you like your target?
Yeah, so each book, it's a different target audience. I'm probably not a good writer in that aspect, and you probably hear this from other writers and stuff, that you kind of have to have a targeted audience for almost everything you do, especially for factual based books, which mine are, because you kind of need to be an expert in that niche in order to build that audience. And I don't do that as much as a lot of other people do. So I'm sorry, I'm getting off track here with the question. Can you repeat that question again?
No. So like in terms of like readership and audience too, I know you move around a lot. You have different books about expats in Ireland and other fiction books, and you have the Microsoft, like different stuff. So too, do you think about audience when you write in this, or you just like, when I talk about experience though, but yeah, you have a certain like audience you want to like attach to?
Yeah, so I do. But that's where I was going with the answer, now that I remember. It depends on the book that I'm writing. So with the How to Manage Your Manager book, there was a very specific audience in mind for that. It wasn't so much people who are managers to manage other people. It's about normal people who work for somebody else and how to be successful in that role and in what they do. And so I was very specific in regards to that audience. And it was also very US based. And I call that out in the book, that there are references, there's stuff in there that's useful for if you live in, I will just say in London, since that's where I'm at. But obviously, if you're going to go take that to, say, France, it might not be as useful. One, you'd have to translate it. And two, how the work environment there is a little bit different there. So there is that. So it is that particular novel. I was thinking this is mostly going to be for a US audience, for your kind of everyday worker bee type person. The person that just wants to be successful in what they're doing, not necessarily wants to move up and be the CEO of their own company. So with that one, it was a very specific thought process of who my audience was.
Okay, what was the feedback like for that in terms of like online readership, and people were like talking to you maybe in person about the book, or like bought the book? What was like the feedback people got from it? Did people like the message you want to portray, did that get across to people, or did that say?
I think most of the time it did, because I'm one of those people, I read my reviews, which I know you're not supposed to do, and but I do, and so it was funny. I remember one review was by somebody, and I don't remember specifically what it said, but it was basically something to the equivalent of like, the book has a lot about like how to be a good ass kisser, which is good in your career life, but also useful for like in your relationships, which I thought was kind of funny that they got that out of a book about being successful in a corporate environment, that they're like, hey, I can use this with my relationship with my significant other. So I thought that was kind of an interesting review. But for the most part, yeah, it seems like everybody is getting out of the book what I intended for them to get out of the book.
Okay, so like in terms of like now, like with the quarantine going on too, and like the pandemic, like how has that affected your creativity? Have you found like new ideas? Have you been have writer's block, or how has that been?
Oh, it's driving me nuts, man. I'm suffering from quarantine brain, I think is what and so I have a hard time motivating myself to work from home anyway. I've kind of always been that way. I get lazy when I'm at home, and so I have had a hard time, especially because I should be super productive right now, right? I've got all this time
Yeah.
to sit and stare at my computer and type, and I'm not doing as good of a job as I should be doing. I'm still writing a little bit every day, but I'm jumping around a lot.
Mm.
I'm not working on anything specific. And yeah, so for me, I'm having a hard time with it. I know other people might be more successful in this type of an environment where they're being forced to, but I really have to force myself to write a little bit every day.
Yeah, a lot of it too is like because I'm like myself too. I like to travel a lot too, though. And like thing is, I like to move around a lot too. So I can't be in one place and stuck in I can't look at a computer and like start writing or have like an idea for like a vlog and then like okay, I'm good. I need to like move around and like think about it, listen to music. So I need to be like it's like some people are it's different artistic like abilities, So
Yeah. Do you find that you mentioned music? Do you listen to certain types of music
I
depending
mean,
on what you're
it's
working on?
like mostly hip hop, but like sometimes I listen to EDM to get like pumped up or something like that too. Or just like if I find because I write too like poetry and all that too. So if I'm writing like that too, I just need to like listen to a certain song and I'm like, oh, I'm motivated now. I start writing stuff out and then boom.
Yeah, I think that's great. I do that too sometimes, depending on what I'm working on. I'm like, I feel like I need this type of music. Like if this were a scene, what music would be playing in the background of that scene? Yeah.
So like in terms of like publishing your first couple books, like what motivated you to like actually like take the step to like publish it too? I know you're like when you're writing it too, you're like motivated too, you're in the moment, or like you're writing your experiences. Like what motivated you like to finally publish it too? And what were you think? What were your thoughts about it at first? Like, oh my god, you were like nervous about it? Were you like kind of like thinking like not to really think about it? Like, what was your thoughts on those?
I wasn't too nervous about publishing it at first because I did with these two books, the ones that are published, I did write them with that intent. Like I knew that's what was going to be what I was going to be doing with them. So not too much. I was a bit nervous in regards to the first one, the Irish book, when I sent that to an editor. So if you have anybody listening or watching that when they're thinking about editing their book, spend the money on a good editor, because this will bite you in the ass if you don't. So I sent it to an editor. I paid them. They sent it back, and I just kind of trusted everything that they did and just kind of accepted it all, and then published it. And then I started getting this feedback from people who read it, and then reviews, and they're like, "There's grammar errors and that kind of shit in this," and it was my fault because I trusted somebody without properly vetting them in advance, and I didn't have a lot of money to spend, so I kind of went with somebody that was a little on the cheaper side. And so when I started getting that feedback from that first book, that did stress me out a bit and angered me. And I was like, same thing. You see the reviews, and I'm like, oh, fuck you.
Yeah, of course.
And, so what I had to do is I had to actually pull the book down, send it to a different editor, which of course then had that extra cost of sending it to a second editor. So publishing it in the first place didn't stress me out too much. I think if you're financially dependent on it in a certain way, so I had a decent job prior to leaving that job, so I had money in the bank, and I do enough stuff on the side. I'm one of those side gig people, and so I've got like my various side gigs for income. So I'm not solely dependent on the income from the books, and so that helps with stress levels. And I think if you are solely dependent on it, then of course you're going to be more stressed. But for me, I wasn't too stressed about publishing them, though.
Okay, so like in terms of advice, to go elaborate on that more too. In terms of editing too, would you like have like a niche editor, or you just like pick somebody? And like the first one, you probably picked somebody like a random editor, right? And the second one, you probably just like think about more niche like editor too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the big one. So don't just find an editor because that maybe they edit a certain type of genre. And I did actually, it was interesting because I did reach out to one editor, and she replied to me. She's like, I generally only edit this type of stuff. I think she only edited like science fiction or something like that. So she actually said no to me, which was probably a good thing. So she focused on her niche. It would have been nice if maybe she recommended somebody to me, but she didn't. But anyway, so look at, one, is the editor in your niche? And there's different types of editors too. Like, are you looking for just basically, which was what I was, which was looking for like a grammar and punctuation, spelling type editor, or are you looking for an editor that's going to give you feedback on the general overall of the book and the readability of it and that kind of stuff? So in my case, I have terrible grammar. I am incompetent when it comes to my grammar.
I can relate to that, so don't worry about
it. Yeah. Don't know what it is. Yeah. So it'll go through a few rounds of editing. My first editor is always going to be my girlfriend. And so she goes through and does an edit on it and gives me feedback on it. I then take it, I do a rewrite based on that, and then I might send it out to somebody else if I want. So it'll go through multiple edits. So the How to Manage Your Manager one went through me, her, back to me, a friend of mine, back to me, the paid editor, and then to publishing. So that went through quite a few different iterations.
Great. So like in terms of like your next book or like future books, what are some of your goals for like future books after you learn all about like the mistakes you made and editors and all that too? Like you've learned a lot though. What are some of your goals for like the present time and like future in terms of like publishing and like your readership?
Yeah, so I'm continually trying to grow an audience. So that's really helpful. But in regards to, I'm working on 2 books right now. I'm working on a piece of nonfiction, which is the series of essays that I mentioned earlier. And then I've got a novel, a piece of fiction. And that's actually, I've finished my first draft on that. And I'm waiting on somebody to read it and give me feedback on it. Both of those books, when they're ready, I'll start sending them to agents and publishers in the hopes that one of them will pick it up. But that's the immediate goals of what I'm working on right now. So the first draft is done on the novel. I'm in the process of writing the first draft of the series of essays right now.
Okay, so you have a lot of experience with your books now. So any advice for people out there, like what are some of the steps you take? I know everybody is like different in terms of like their like publishing, but what are some of the steps you took to like writing to like editing to publishing? Like, what was like the first couple steps for you?
Yeah,
your end goal.
Yeah, I mean, step 1 is get off your ass and do it. I talk to people all the time, especially like when they're, oh, you published a book. Yeah, I have an idea for a book. I'm like, okay, well, right. Great. Yeah. Everybody has an idea for a book, right? It's easy. Everybody has ideas. It's easy to have an idea. You need to stop coming up with excuses to not act on that idea. I mean, I'm, like I said earlier, I have an excuse of I'm sitting at home on my butt and not writing as much as I should. And I'm coming up with excuses of like that. Well, I don't write well from home. That's just an excuse, right? And so you need to get rid of those excuses. And like I said, write every day. If you look at most successful authors, they will say they write every day. For me, I have a goal of 5 days a week. I write for at least 30 minutes. Lately, I've been doing less than that. And I started at that 15 minutes. So my initial goal when I was working on these 2 books was I'm going to write for at least 15 minutes every day, 5 days a week. And I've upped that to 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. My goal is an hour and a half every day. And I'm going to try to break that up to like some in the morning and some in the evening. But I haven't been very good about that. But that's number 1. I mean, if you don't write, you're never going to be a writer. It's that simple. It's good if you have and there's no excuses. There's literally no excuses. If you watch TV at all in the day, then you have no excuse for not writing, right? Because that means you have time to sit and watch a 30-minute show, an hour-long show that you could be writing. Yep. So I don't buy into that. I have kids, I have a job, I did this and that and that. There's no excuse. Like you can squeeze in time. The second thing is having a supportive partner. If you're in a relationship, that's kind of hard sometimes because they're like, oh, pay attention to me. And it's like, I don't want to pay attention to you. I'm feeling creative right now. I'm in the zone.
Yeah, man, that's it.
Yeah, and so that's hard sometimes, but you just got to kind of set that boundary. And then I guess once you get it done, look at it from a point of view of somebody else. So we're really good about thinking we're brilliant sometimes, or we're really bad about thinking we're brilliant, and maybe we are, and we think we're terrible. But so you need to be able to step back and read something from the point of view of somebody else. I've read tons of books, and I'm sure you probably have too. And you're like, "This is terrible!" Like, or
I can do that.
Yeah, and especially like a lot of self-published books are like that. You read them, and you're like, this is poorly written. This is, why do you do this? So you need to step back and read it and say, is this actually good? And it's okay if it's not. Then that's when you start the rewriting process, right? And start kind of tweaking it or throw it away. My first novel I wrote years ago, and I've only done a first draft at it. And this is another piece of advice: never let somebody read a first draft. That's always a terrible idea because it's usually crap, and they'll read it and they'll be like, "Oh, it's great," because they want to be nice, but it's not, or they'll be honest and be like, "It's terrible." So sometimes it's good to like step back and say, is this worth reading or not? Is this worth rewriting or not? And if it's not, put it in a drawer and work on something else. Like the novel that I'm working on that I just finished the first draft of, I started that years ago. I wrote probably the first 3/4 of it, and I couldn't figure out how to end it, and I set it aside. And so if you need to do that, set something aside, go work on something else. And then rewrite, edit, rewrite, and then publish. And don't be, like the great thing about the world we live in now is you're not solely dependent upon publishers, right? You can self-publish now and make a good income. There are plenty of people that make a living off self-publishing novels and their books, but you got to really promote the shit out of it. And I keep swearing on this. Is that okay?
No, that's cool, man. That's cool. Rated R. That's cool.
All right, good. But so depending on what route you want to go in regards to publishing it, don't be afraid to do it. I mean, if you put something out there into the world and it fails, you did it and it failed, but at least you can say you did it, which is much better than like wondering what would have ever happened.
That's great advice, man. That's great advice. So in terms of like branding and promotion too, I know that's like some people aren't social media like savvy. So it's like, what's some like things you like, what do you find like your strengths and weaknesses of like promoting yourself and branding?
Yeah, I'm really good at social media, but I'm also really terrible at social media. And in the sense of like, I know what to do and where to go and how to do it, but I don't do it because I'm so like, if you like for my Instagram, for example, it's about like acting stuff. It's about writing stuff. It's about like, all this different things. And what you need to do, especially in the fiction category, especially in the nonfiction category, is you need to have a niche, and everything you need to do needs to be in that niche. I know a guy who's a writer. He wrote a book about LinkedIn marketing, and he's kind of in that field of like jobs and LinkedIn and that kind of stuff. And he does a really good job of branding himself in that field. And that's really what you need to do. If let's say you think about like it's an author, right? So let's say you go to Stephen King's, I don't know if he has an Instagram, but like, let's say you go to Stephen King's Instagram. You kind of want to see stuff that's kind of relevant to him, what you want to expect from him, right? I don't necessarily want to see Stephen King posting shit on his Instagram. Well, maybe you do because it's Stephen King, right? But so you might want to see anything.
New authors, maybe not.
Yeah, exactly. For a new author, people don't want to see pictures of your kid running around doing something cute, right? We don't give a shit about your kid. Sorry, but it's true. And so you need to make sure whatever social media channels you're using, that you're posting stuff that's relevant to what you want to be known as. If I want to be known as an expert in business management, I need to be posting stuff on Twitter about like business that business, that, so forth and so on. That's the key to being successful on social media, and where I'm not, because I'm all over the fucking place.
Wow. I appreciate you coming on too. I use like to end with my guests, like words of like positivity from you to the audience and the world out there.
Any words of positivity? Yeah, I mean, don't give up on your dreams, man. Like, that's the big one. And I know that's stupid that everybody says that, but but in the sense of the biggest, I know I wrote a book about being in business, so I'm being kind of a bit of a hypocrite here, but I spent the majority of my adult life doing something that I didn't really enjoy doing, just for the sole purpose of getting a paycheck. Right? Until one day I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something that I want to do. I need to actually, because I'm going to die someday, right? We all going to fucking die. And do you want to be lying on your deathbed being like, yay, I just made a multi-million-dollar company more money. Great, good for them. But did I get any satisfaction out of that? And so when I made that decision of like, look, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do what I want to do. I'm kicking myself for spending so much time not doing what I wanted to do with my life. And it's a hard balance, because you got to pay your rent. You need to feed yourself. You've got all that kind of other crap that you need to deal with. So find that balance. But so it's not so much don't give up on your dreams. That's stupid. Pretend I never said that. But it's more about keep doing what you want to do in life, even if it's on the side, even if it's in the form of a side gig, even in the form of writing a few minutes every day. Don't let being a certain age, hold you back. There was this story about this actress, and she was in the lady that was in Throw Mama from the Train. I don't know if you guys ever remember that movie. That was from like the 80s. Yeah. So the mother from that film, like, she didn't get her big break until she was in her like 60s or something like that. And prior to that, she was nobody. And so, I mean, that's pretty far up there. And so she stuck with it and eventually made it. And, so that's my motivational advice.
Motivating too. So just drop.
I don't know if that's motivating or not.
It's cool. So just drop social media, your websites, anybody can find your books, Instagram, Facebook, and all that. Just drop that now so people can find you.
Yeah. So it's Milo Denison, MiloDenison.com. That's my website. It's everything you can get to from there. You can find the books. You can find my Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's my social media channel of choice. So Milo Denison at Milo Denison is on Instagram. So those are probably the two places to go. You can find links to my books. You can find out whatever the hell else I'm up to on there, and follow me. So website, Instagram.
I appreciate you coming on, Milo. I mean, yeah, it's very, very great insight and great successes, man. Like, thank you for coming on. Next time I have you on, talk about travel. Just talk about travel and
dude, I would absolutely come on and talk strictly about travel.
Man. So it's more interesting but thank you, man, for coming on, man. I appreciate you. So
hey, no, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it, and best to you as well.
Thank you for watching, everybody. Squad support. Buy the books. That's it. Go to the website, Instagram, follow him. At least like his books, comment. If you don't buy the books, just comment and like the support. That's it.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. If you get the book, leave a fucking review. Like, friends of mine, actual friends of mine who have read the book have not reviewed it. And I want to punch them in the face, not literally, but like take time, because you're supporting authors. So if you read a book from an author, give them a review. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a 5-star review. It could be 4 stars.
It's like Uber and DoorDash. It's like Uber and DoorDash. Yeah. You leave them reviews, you can leave with author reviews. So, it's like leave reviews, guys. That's
especially independent authors, man. Do it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, man. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Countless Vlogcast. I'm Milo Denison, author from London and US. So peace out, guys. Thank you for watching. All right.
Thanks a lot, Justin. Cheers.